Let's get back to that story on whether or not we could reach or get taxes announced on Wednesday. Well, at last count, Treasury was expecting a shortfall in tax revenue of more than 300 billion rand. And with the economy experiencing no growth and business activity and employment shrinking, Finance Minister Tito Mboweni is between a rock and a hard place. Expect deteriorating budget deficit and debt figures when the announcement of that budget takes place. Well, to find out to what extent this will affect taxpayers, I'm joined by tax expert at Mazars, Bernard Sachs. Bernard, thanks very much indeed for talking to us. First of all, that empty tax revenue pot not only reflects poor businesses and workers who just didn't contribute this year because of the unemployment state in the country. You'll tell me that perhaps there were blunders made during the lockdown that also led to this dire state of tax revenue collection.
Yes, well, good evening to you, Devan, and good evening to your viewers. Just a few opening comments. The economy was in a rather precarious state before COVID started and before the lockdown. But then during the lockdown, of course, we saw what, from a fiscal point of view, was a somewhat strange strategy, which was to ban the sale of alcohol and ban the sale of tobacco products. Now, what that did was cut off the taps to quite a significant potential flow of revenue to the fiscus. Because I need to, I don't think I need to remind you or the viewers that economic activity, the economic activity that was taking place, almost ground to a complete halt, certainly during the first 5 or so weeks of the lockdown. Mm-hmm. And by cutting off the flow of the excise duties and the VAT, which could have flowed from tobacco and alcohol product sales, I believe that they made the situation far worse. Of course, I do hasten to add, I'm not a medical expert, and so I would expect that there were solid medical reasons for doing so. But from a fiscal point of view, in my view, it seems to me that it was an unmitigated disaster.
Which brings us, I beg your pardon, to where we are with this budget now, where taxes are not usually announced in the midterm budget, but there's increasingly this feeling that the finance minister could raise the flag on some taxes to come. What do you think we're in for?
Well, yes, you're quite right. You're quite right, Devan. The midterm budget policy statement is not the time where changes to taxes or new taxes are traditionally announced. That having been said, we are living through extraordinary times at the moment, and there is the outside possibility that some form of a once-off tax might be announced. Now, what that might be, I'm not entirely sure. We saw a transition levy so some years back where a percentage of the tax bill was added to each taxpayer's percentage of the taxpayer was added to each taxpayer's tax bill for persons who earned above a particular amount. Mm-hmm. Now, we may see something like that imposed again tomorrow. But even if that were to be so, it wouldn't go very far to plugging a 300 billion rand plus hole. And this is the dilemma that the minister faces. He needs to spend, but he doesn't have the money to spend. So he needs to cut back on spending. But by cutting back on spending, and he's going to reduce stimulus and reduce growth. And so he is in a very, what one might call an unenviable position.
With a few seconds left, it brings me to the next point here. I suppose efficiency at SARS is another issue. And, you've had the skills exodus, if you like, take place in recent years. There's also the issue of taxpayer trust that needs to be addressed. And above all, if he gets those aspects right, perhaps we can have some silver lining at the end of the day, but presumably that will take some time.
Yes, I think that will take some time, and we've seen, we've seen the goings-on playing out at the Zondo Commission, and that doesn't do much for taxpayer trust, because when taxpayers see how their hard-earned taxes are being spent, they don't feel particularly good. And that's part of the problem. And so the government has to act swiftly. And I think they are doing so, but they have to act with continued and redoubled resolve in order to ensure that corruption is weeded out as quickly as possible and that we can get the economy back onto a growth trajectory. Because without growth, we're going to go nowhere. We really need to be able to. We need to stimulate the growth. We need to increase jobs. We need to create as many jobs as possible, and that was part of President Ramaphosa's strategy in the plan that he announced just a few days ago. So I am hopeful that we are on the right trajectory, but we face an uphill battle. It's a mountain that we have to climb.
Well, we'll leave it there. Bernard Sachs there from the tax grouping Mazars. Thanks very much indeed for talking to us. And we'll know when the Finance Minister takes the podium what the state of circumstances really are. Sally, as you can see, 304 billion rand off target. There's a lot of money that should be in those tax coffers, but they're not there.
What time is that address on Wednesday?
Wednesday, 2 o'clock. We look forward to it.